Um,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a good segue into who was the first overall pick and a team I'm actually really
Yeah.
excited about, which is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars and their new franchise quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. I'm
Mhm.
kind of excited. I mean, I don't think they're going to do well this year. I don't think they're going to break 500. But that
No.
being said, I kind of like some of the pieces that they put together, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on it.
Well, I like what they did. They're a very young team. They have a lot of good defensive players that are going into their second year, and a lot of offensive players that they just drafted, like Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne.
Yep.
And then who was the offensive lineman they drafted?
They
So I
have
know
Walker Little.
Walker Little. Okay, the kid from Stanford, who I was very high on. He had an injury, so he did not play the 2020 college season.
Yeah.
And I think he was out of football a little before that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But when he is on the field, I mean, he was one of the most dominant tackles. He's technically sound, and he's just a big dude. I want to say he's like 6'7",
Yeah.
300 pounds. And so I like the way that they're going. To me, I kind of think that they're in a very similar situation to the Jets and the Bengals, is that
Mm-hmm.
I think they have a lot of really good young pieces. It's just going to take time for them to develop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree with that, and it's especially then, and so we were just talking about Walker Little, and there might be an opportunity for him to play this year because when looking over the Jags, and ironically, I actually for how bad the team was last year, they had one of the best interior offensive line trios with their left guard, with their guards and their center, but their weak spot was in their tackle position, but. Cam Robinson, they just franchise tagged him, and they're hoping for him to rebound. He was 67th overall out of tackles. And in the right tackle was Jawan Taylor, who was 79th overall. But he's going into his third season. And it's really kind of one of those, you did draft Walker Little, so he can always come in and replace if things start to go really poorly. But however, though, it can kind of only go up for these young tackle trios, and if they can get a pretty solid offensive line in front of Trevor Lawrence, it could be kind of scary for them. I mean, James Robinson last year, rushed for over 1,000 yards. He had in 14 games. If he stays healthy all year, I think he can easily break that again, maybe even break 1,300. They're and a lot of that is because of the strong interior line running between the tackles. And so then you have Travis Etienne as well, and you got Trevor Lawrence, who's just kind of an athletic freak who they can implement the RPO offense, and if they can get a solid offensive line in front of him, they can be kind of dangerous moving the ball up and down the field.
Yeah, no, definitely. And from what I've heard, is they're kind of using Travis Etienne as like a gadget player.
That's what it sounds
like
like.
he's been taking snaps in the slot, in the running back position. I even read that they did some formations where he's just like coming out of the backfield. He's not necessarily like in a like standard position. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see this young Jacksonville offense. Do you know who like some of their top wide receivers are? I know DJ Chark is one. And then I'm trying to remember some of their weapons.
So the top three guys that's looking like it's going to be DJ Chark, and he had a fairly solid year last year, 13 games, 706 yards with 5 touchdowns. Then they also have probably one of my favorite names that I've seen so far, Laviska Shenault Jr. He's their slot receiver. He had 600.
That's right.
He had 600 yards with 5 touchdowns. They also brought in Marvin Jones, who's probably going to become their receiver one. And even with Detroit last year, he had 978 yards and 9 touchdowns, almost 1,000-yard receiver.
Okay.
And that's not a solid. That's not a bad trio of receivers right there, especially if you have Travis Etienne coming in the backfield, putting him in motion. What I'm really curious about is what's the competition battle at the tight end position. They brought over Chris Manhertz from Carolina, and he's kind of been a journeyman. Tight end, but he's actually very big, so we could see some red zone production out of him.
And don't forget Tim Tebow.
And Tim Tebow, I forgot to write that one down. So I apologize to all the Tebow maniacs out there. You are a maniac if you're a Tebow fan, and so No, I'm just kidding. But then, anyways, before you threw me off track there with that dumb
No, it's all
comment,
good.
but
Look,
then Luke,
if he makes the roster, that'd be cool.
it would be cool to see him on the run. I mean, it'd be. I don't know. I was you have Luke Farrell, who the tight end that they drafted out of the 5th round. Would you take Tim Tebow over Luke Farrell? I haven't even
Look,
seen
the
any
better
film on
player
Luke
should
Farrell.
play.
I agree,
The
and I'm going to
so I
guess.
don't know.
I'm going to guess it's Luke Farrell. But what was really interesting about this, so we talk all, for me, what was really interesting that they brought on um, a lot of weapons here on the offensive side. But I think besides maybe Walker Little, depending on how the offensive tackles do, I could honestly see all of their draft picks getting significant playing time. Jalen Camp was their 6th round pick, the receiver, I believe, out of Georgia Tech. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's him, or
We'll
I
have
could
to
be.
do that in the comments.
Yeah, let's do that in the comments. Or if not, I'm thinking of another late round receiver that another team took. But Tyson Campbell, he's going to start. I predict Andre Cisco, the safety, he's going to start. They're going to match up probably with Shaquille Griffin that they just signed from Seattle. He's going to probably going to be their cornerback 1. Then they also brought on Rayshawn Jenkins as their safety. So that right there is probably going to be their secondary. Griffin, Campbell on opposite sides, and then Rayshawn Jenkins and Cisco. Because honestly, you have nothing to lose. They were already the 31st ranked defense last year. They were horrible in defense. I think they brought back some cornerbacks and some of their secondary, some left. And it doesn't really matter because they were just so abysmal to begin with. Their defensive line, they added depth and same thing with the linebacker position as well. They added depth and youth. So it's really just going to be kind of a free-for-all and kind of as what you just said, the best players are going to play and the ones that provide the most production. So it's going to be interesting to see how they move in these pieces of all these young guys that they drafted, young guys that they drafted over the past couple of years, any new signees as well. Because their defense is going to be abysmal, but it's going to be interesting to see how they move around these pieces. I could honestly see a lot of like this almost being a trial run year for their defense and seeing who they want to keep long term and who's probably going to get the boot here after the season or two.
And that's kind of what we said at the beginning was that I think they have a lot of good pieces together. I think this season is just going to be kind of like everybody developing and learning to play together. And then in 2022 is when they'll probably be a much bigger threat.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me into what I was going to say with my record prediction, unless you have something to add before.
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay, so I know we said a lot of good things about the Jaguars. I am going to say that they're going to go 4-13.
Okay.
They have a really tough. They have a really tough schedule. So
yeah, for being the number 1 overall pick, they really do.
No, they do. So week 2 they're playing Denver, week 3 Arizona, and then 5 and 6 they play Tennessee and Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to go. Then they have to go. Oh, sorry, hold on. Then they play Buffalo, have to go to Indianapolis, and then they play San Francisco and Atlanta, and then the Chargers, Titans, Jets, and Patriots to finish off the year. They play Houston in between there somewhere, but that's an easy win.
Yeah.
And so they just have a really tough schedule, especially for being the 1st overall pick. They're in a tough division, and they are playing the AFC East, which in my opinion is the most competitive division in football. So just kind of got a bad draw there. But I think that's going to set them up even better because they're going to have a top draft pick in 2022 as well to kind of pile in on top of it. So,
yeah, well, and that's kind of what you're expected here. Like a couple years ago when the Cardinals drafted Kyler Murray 1st overall. I wish I watched them more, and I wish we were doing this now, and so we could take a deep, in-depth kind of look into all this because it's going to be really interesting to see this team now because they are going to be really fun to watch. But they're not going to be good. But you're going to see those moments where they have those games and they're absolutely just things are clicking. But then also they're going to show their youth and experience. But it'll be fun to keep up with them throughout the year and see how Trevor Lawrence develops, see how Travis Etienne develops, see how James Robinson is it James right now Cam. On my notes I kept putting down Cam Robinson. Cam Robinson's the left tackle. James Robinson is the running back. But on all my
Okay.
notes, I'm like running back Cam. Nope, erase James Robinson. So, but it's going to be fun to see how he develops as well, especially having a much better quarterback. Hopefully, the
Mhm.
tackles continue to develop, and the
Yeah.
interior continues to be one of the best in the league. And that was actually really interesting for me. I know I already said this, but for being the worst team last year and then having I think the 6th and 13th ranked best guards in the league. And then statistically, Brandon Lindor was the best pass blocking center in 2020.
Mhm.
Even though I think the Jaguars had probably the worst pass offense in the league.
Mhm.
So it was very interesting. It was very weird because normally those things, you have a good offensive line, that normally your other pieces can't kind of come through, which makes me optimistic if they can still have that same production on the offensive line and the tackles can get a little bit better with much better talent around them and maybe even better coaching. The Jaguars
Mhm.
could sneak out maybe even more than 4 games, maybe 5 or 6, because there are some potential here.
Yeah.
They could beat Houston, they could beat Denver, they could beat the Bengals, they could not beat the Bills or the Colts. Seahawks maybe only the Seahawks
Yeah.
will decide who wins that game if they show poorly.
I have them beating the Seahawks.
Yeah, them beating the Seahawks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the one. So for a young team like this, games that are home, I like favoring them more. When you go on the road,
Yeah.
especially a young team going to Seattle, I think there's going to be some
Yeah. Yeah.
unexpected mistakes. So that's why I would put money on the Seahawks. Now that's just a complete superstition on my part, but
Well, I
that
also don't think the Seahawks are going to be that good, but we can get to that in another episode.
yeah, we'll get that when we get to the NFC West. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, all in all, I think it's
But
going to be fun to watch, and not
mhm.
really too much more to say about that.
Mhm. I don't either.